Well, Melissa, thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with you regarding what's going on at CCWD. Not only will I try to let you know what's happening at the district, I'll also talk about the drought management plan and what's happening in terms of water supply and how we're responding and reacting to it. And looking forward to the Q&A as well at the end. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. So next slide too, Melissa, can we do that? So I'm Ernie Avila. As you notice, I'm the president of the board. It's been a real honor and a pleasure to serve on the board of directors for Contra Costa Water District. I've been very, very lucky. I think one of the things that really has helped me to be on the board of directors is that I used to be a former planning commissioner in the city of Concord. And I got to tell you, that 10 years of experience was pretty enlightening in terms of making sure I had a better understanding of land use planning and the integration of that information with working on water supply management. I think one of the things that I wanted to mention about our respective organization is many people believe that we're part of the county. We're actually not. We're our own special district within the state of California. We have 5 directors that are elected to represent the respective divisions. We are set up in divisions. My division 3, as Melissa mentioned, is I cover Walnut Creek, Clayton, good part of Concord, and part of Pleasant Hill as well. Antonio Martinez is the vice president of the board. He's very recently came on board. He's covering the areas of Antioch and parts of Pittsburgh in his responsibilities. John Berg has most of Pleasant Hill and Martinez. Constance Holdaway has the Oakley area and the area around Los Vaqueros Reservoir, including parts of Antioch as well. One of the things that we did at our last board meeting, and most people may not realize, is one of our directors resigned, and we appointed a new director for Division 1, which covers the Concrete Naval Weapons Station area and the city of Pittsburgh as well, and parts of Clyde. Pat Young, who is with lives in Pittsburgh, was appointed by the board unanimously at our last board meeting. We're really excited about having her join our board. She brings a lot of community service in her respective area, and she showed a lot of enthusiasm about trying to join our board. So it was obviously very effective because we picked her again unanimously. We're excited about her coming on board for her first board meeting in July. I think the one thing I'd probably mention also about our board is if you look at the experiences of the board that we have on there, there's probably over 120 years of engineering and water utility experience among the five of us here. So there's a lot of dedication about trying to make sure we're ready for the future. Next slide, Melissa. Our service area, this is a great little graphic that shows the respective divisions and the areas that we represent. If you look at the light green areas, our agency provides treated water, which means that we're responsible for providing not only moving water through the area, but treating water and providing water to the tap in the areas that are light green. So you'll see the little sign that says CCWD Treated Water Service Area. So that's Clayton, Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, little parts of Martinez, Clyde area. The other areas represent areas in which we provide raw water, which we convey, and each different local municipality treats their own water and then distributes it within their own system to the ratepayers. So that it provides an overall, we cover about 500,000 people within our service area, a little more than that. So each division director represents about 100 to 110,000 people overall. It's quite a bit of responsibility. We cover quite a big area, which means that we have an opportunity to talk about a variety of different issues that cross the gamut of the county. Next slide, please, Melissa. One of the things most people don't realize is in terms of the responsibility of providing water, what does it take to provide water? It's not just the purchasing of the water. We've got to be able to move it and store it and treat it and distribute it. So for the untreated water service area, we have 4 delta intakes into the delta. We also have 4 major reservoirs, including the most important one and the largest one, the Los Vaqueros Reservoir, which is, I've got to say, is one of the best investments our ratepayers have ever made in terms of investing for storage for the future, because that's what's saving us right now. We operate a 48-inch-mile canal, which was built by the Bureau of Reclamation. It's about 90-year-old facility. Probably the most important element are the first 25 miles, which conveys 100% of the water that we drink throughout the region. The shortcut pipeline goes the following 25 miles to the Pleasant Hill Walnut Creek area, but the shortcut pipeline goes off of the canal and provides the main bulk of water to Martinez. So it's redundant in terms of the shortcut pipeline. In the treated water service area, by the way, you'll often hear that as a canal loop, and that's what that is. The treated water service area has 3 water treatment plants. Randall Bold, we have 2 treatment plants, one for Brentwood and then one that we share with the Diablo Water District. We also have the Bolden Water Treatment Plant. Overall, we have almost 62,000 connections within the treated water service area. We have almost 900 miles of pipeline with a variety of ages. It goes we had some pipes that are 60, 70, 80 years old. And one of the things that we're working on very hard is to make sure we have a good replacement strategy for the pipelines, because they do age on you, but fortunately they last for a good while. We have 41 different storage tanks and 31 different pump stations. What most folks don't realize is probably about 95% of our cost, for the most part, is associated with taking care of operating, maintaining, constructing, building, and replacing these facilities. Next slide, Melissa. I wanted to structure my presentation a little bit around the water journey. And I bring this up because when we look at the duties and responsibilities of CCWD, we have to play a role in every one of these different elements. We get our water from the Bureau of Reclamation. And so most of our water, matter of fact, almost 100% of our water is stored in Shasta Reservoir as part of the Bureau of Reclamation Central Valley Project. That comes from snowmelt from within that wide watershed of the Shasta area. That water then is conveyed through the Delta, discharged through the Delta. We then take that water from the Delta, it's stored in our reservoirs. We then move that water also through the canal system using a variety of different pump stations, followed by their treatment within the treatment plant down below. And then finally, we use the distribution pipelines to get that water to the top. Our organization has to have key stakeholders and have representation and have to be engaged in every one of these different elements. Next slide, please. So in terms of water supply, what's happening here is pretty darn dire. Shasta, down the photo down below is when Shasta is, we have 2 key reservoirs that play a key role in terms of being ready for drought management. Lake Shasta is 40% full and getting drier, not getting any wetter. So it's one of the things, it's one of the most historical droughts we've ever had in the state of California. Shasta would normally be substantially higher in terms of its elevation due to snowmelt, but we're dealing with a less than full snowmelt that occurred. So that has meant that the Bureau of Reclamation has throttled back the water supply that they provide, even CCWD. Fortunately, one of the things that we've negotiated with the Bureau of Reclamation is they would provide enough water to make sure that we could continue to provide water safely to our customers and for business and commercial and industrial customers as well. If you look down below, Los Vaqueros Reservoir is about 60% full. That is our largest reservoir at 160,000 acre feet. This is the reason why we can still maintain and handle another year of drought, because we've been able to bank as much as possible to be able to take water and put that in Los Vaqueros Reservoir at every opportunity that we could. I think one of the things that's really kind of amazing about Los Vaqueros and why these facilities are important is that what we're finding about climate change is that here's how the Delta operation have changed over the years. Before, when snow melt would come through and Lake Shasta would discharge water based on the snow melt that would come through, we'd be able to tap water from the Delta on regular stints over the years. What we've discovered recently is that if you recall the big storms that we had in January, we had these major monsoons of water that came in with a lot of incredible snow. And we thought perhaps the drought might be over, because if we have a normal amount of rainfall and snow that would occur after those big storms, we'd be able to recover from the drought. Would end up being drier, very, very dry. And so what's happened is when we have these big monster storms that come in, it's like a slug of water that flows through the Delta with the amount of water that came in. If you do not have if we don't have the straws, the intakes into the Delta that can draw the water when it's available, we're going to be limited. And so one of the biggest investments we also made at CCWD was having those multiple intakes in the Delta. So when the conditions are right and we have we have the right water quality and our rights are in play with water rights, we can draw that water out and store it at Los Vaqueros. Next slide, please. One of the things that we do in terms of preparing for drought is one of the things that we work on is it's a multi-agency effort when it comes to preparing for drought. So one of the things that we do, for example, is every 5 years, we update our urban water management plan. And it takes into account what is the amount of water supply that could be coming in, how will we coordinate and make sure that we're planning for water supply for our respective area. So one of the things that we do is we coordinate with Central SAN. So for example, what most people don't realize is we work very closely with Central SAN. And one of the things that we assume, for example, is that anywhere from 10 to 12, up to even 15% of water supply, we anticipate will be covered by Central SAN and recycled water facilities. What that allows us to do is that means that we don't have to overdraw or try to secure more water rights if we know that recycled water is going to play a key role. So we work very closely with Central SAN when working and planning for the future. We also work with our municipal customers like the City of Antioch. This is the City of Antioch's intake area. We work with them as well in terms of how they're planning for droughts. And so we coordinate our efforts and we craft an urban water management plan that takes into account the different stages of drought, from beginning of a drought to more severe drought, to then upper stages. If the drought gets more severe, there's different ways that we can try to mitigate and deal with that. I'll bring this up a little bit more in one of the future slides. Next slide, please. One of the most common questions we get is, how is it that Contra Costa Water District is allowing growth to occur? How can you provide water and have growth occur at the same time when we're dealing with a drought? It's a fantastic question. And there's a lot of information that's in this graphic, and I'm going to try to explain it. On the left-hand side is the amount of water that we use in thousands of acre feet in a given year. This is from 1990 to projections to 2025, but that takes into account 2022. On the right-hand side is the population of our service area. So if you look at the area on the left, you can see that in 1990, we were using about 140,000 acre feet, with a population of about 100,000, with a population of about 350,000 people. Now in 2022, we now have a population that's grown significantly to over 500,000 people. But if you look at the blue line, the water use has gone down. And that's really, really important. What's happened is what we've discovered is the public education and outreach has allowed us to educate the public about the need to conserve water effectively. We've also been able to integrate the new uniform plumbing code requirements for low flush toilets, low flow shower heads, public education and learning rebates that have been implemented by a variety of different customers, to the point now that water consumption by our customers has gone from about 180 to 190 gallons per person per day to about 142. Releasing that capacity has allowed us to accommodate growth that's occurred over time. So one of the biggest challenges we're going to have now is, now that we're having more densification, are we still going to be able to allow for growth? Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we have to, our mission is to provide water on a reliable basis. And so one of the things that we do to coordinate our water supply planning is we work with our general plan, the cities that prepare the general plans, and we use their projections to make sure that we have adequate water supplies. It's our mission and our duty and responsibility. When new projects come in that are not within the general plan, one of the key responsibilities we have at CCWD is making sure that the developer, whoever's proposing the project, has sufficient water supply that's coming with their respective project. That's also our duty and responsibility. So it's a large of effort to try to make sure that we're as efficient as possible and that we're planning for growth while at the same time enhancing conservation within our area. Next slide, Melissa. As I mentioned before, the Urban Water Management Plan has different stages. Back in July of 2021, we called for a voluntary 10% water use reduction. We achieved about 9% when we called for that. Now, I will tell you one thing that's very, very important here. During our prior drought, when we asked for a 15% reduction within our community, we did a tremendous public outreach effort in that regard. Not only we asked for 15%, we got more than that. We had 18% reduction by our community. Public outreach and education was very effective. So when we went to stage 1 in July of 2021, we almost hit the mark in terms of hitting our 10% voluntary water use reduction. Compared to Southern California, where we reduced 10% reduction, many water agencies in Southern California actually increased their consumption rather than reduced it. Now in April, we're at stage 2. As of April 2022, the governor has issued his executive order on March 28th. requiring a 15% water use reduction goal for our respective agency, all water agencies. One of the things that the governor was initially going to do was to require a mandatory water use reduction for all water agencies. What we convinced them to do is to let us work our plan. Because we already have, the state requires us to have an urban water management plan. We asked them, that's why we have the plan. Let's implement that and see if that works. And if it doesn't work, then we can look at other measures. So he concurred and authorized us to go ahead and required us to implement stage 2 of our urban water management plans. For Contra Costa Water District, by the way, that would mean we could go up to 20% reduction requirement and up to a 20% surcharge on water use. We didn't go that far. But I will tell you one thing that's really happened. We went for a 15% reduction goal with a 15% surcharge if there is no reduction in consumption. And I'll explain that a little bit further in this presentation. But I do want to give you the heads up about the third bullet here under stage 2. The governor's been under a lot of pressure by a variety of different folks regarding mandating reductions for all agencies, regardless of the urban water management plan success that the different agencies have done. This is being driven because not every water agency has been successful in being able to reduce consumption. Like I said, we hit about 10% ourselves, and we've been pretty good about, on a per capita basis with hot weather and all. Compared to the hot weather last year to the hot weather this year, we definitely have reduced our consumption at CCWD. Southern California has increased theirs by 2%. And so that's where the real issue is. We've been trying to convince the governor that if he's going to issue a mandate for mandatory conservation, that it be based on those agencies that have not been successful in trying to reduce that, meet its goal for the urban water management plan. We'll see what happens, but every indication is that the governor is going to be issuing a mandate to have mandatory reduction in demand for all water customers, respective of where they are on the urban water management plan implementation. By the way, for more information about the drought management plan, you can always go to our ccwater.com/drought, and there's a lot more information there. Next slide, please. Stage 2, in terms of water contingency plans, these are some of just a description of some of the things that we've done, implemented by going into stage 2. Watering of newly constructed homes and buildings that is not allowed unless it's got drip or micro sprays. Serving water, drinking water upon request at drinking establishment. Hotel motels shall provide guests with the option of choosing not to have towels and linens laundered daily. Using non-recycled water for dust control is prohibited. So these are the things that a sampling of some of the different measures that have now been implemented by going to stage 2. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is probably, when we talk about the conservation and rebate programs, I think this is probably one of the most important slides that I try to incorporate in all my presentations, because a lot of people don't realize this. 50% of the water that most residences use is outside for landscaping. And then if you look at the internal use, you can see where the big water uses are within a home, from faucets, showers, washers, and toilet use. So if you look at our rebate program, knowing this information over the years and through years of studies, this is why we focus our rebate programs in these different areas. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we have for resources and rebates that's very, very effective and free, in most cases, they're absolutely free, is, in fact, I think in all cases they're free. we have WaterWise house calls that you call us at any time. We come up and set up an appointment to come out and check your overall water use and come up with ideas and recommendations on how to reduce your water consumption. Lawn to garden rebates are available. Smart irrigation controller rebates are available. This Flume Smart Water Meter is a fantastic little device that we're all providing a rebate. It normally runs about $270, $280, but with a rebate, they run about $90 or about $80, and they're fantastic. It can pick up a running toilet. It's just easy to set up. It can be set up in about 15 minutes, and if you have a leak, it's fantastic in terms of letting you know if you've got a leak overall. Commercially, we also have water use evaluations that are available for our commercial customers. Same rebates for lawn and garden, help with irrigation equipment, and smart irrigation controllers. So we also have coupons and different water conservation devices that are available. This is the number to call if there's any questions regarding the bevy of information that's available for everybody. Next slide, please, Melissa. One of the other big programs that we have underway is the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project. And I mentioned earlier, Los Vaqueros is absolutely critical. It's the reason why we're in better shape than most water agencies. It's because storage, we know, is absolutely pivotal to the success of being able to provide for water supply when it's under stress for droughts. One of the things that we're doing is we've been working as part of the Bay Area Regional Supply work study. We have a partnership with a variety of different sister agencies in the San Francisco Bay Area and around to try to coordinate our planning for water supply needs and water facilities. Prop 1 was passed by the state of California, by the citizens of the state of California, that provided funding, grant funding for storage reservoirs. Los Vaqueros is in the lead in terms of storage facilities that will be implemented under that program. We anticipate we're going to receive over $500 million in state of California funding for this expansion project, with another 25% being provided by the federal government and 25% by a local partnership of water agencies that are working on this project. Next slide, Melissa. These are the different agencies that are making up this Joint Powers Authority to expand Los Vaqueros Reservoir. They include the Alameda County Water District, CCWD, of course, East Bay MUD, the Grasslands Water District, SFPUC, the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority, Santa Clara Valley Water District, and the Zone 7 Water Agency. I think you won't find a better indication of how we can coordinate our efforts and work together on a project like the expansion of Los Vaqueros, which will go from 160,000 acre feet to 270,000 acre feet. One of the most common questions I get is, but isn't that mean that we're going to take some of our water and it's going to be provided to other agencies? The answer is no. We're going to have full continued use and unfettered use of our 160,000 acre foot storage that we paid for. Absolutely. Any expansion will be paid for by others. Real benefit, there are some facilities that are probably going to add so we can improve our ability to get more water. Remember how I mentioned earlier about being able to draw from the Delta as much as possible when it's available? We're going to probably incorporate a pump station that will allow us to give us greater flexibility to be able to draw more water when those spikes of water come through. That'll be the only element we'll probably be paying for overall, but the other facilities will be paid by others. One of the advantages too about this is when you've got pooled storage at the very top of the with the reservoir, it means that if other agencies are in dire straits, we have the ability to share water and provide that as a bank that can be used and transferred as necessary among the respective partners here. I represent CCWD on this Joint Powers Authority for this portion of the work. We've already had 6 meetings in that regard. I've got a small committee meeting, as a matter of fact, tomorrow to talk about it. Let me tell you, this has been a great opportunity for us to work with the respective different special districts and really coordinate really at a regional level water supply and water supply reliability. Next slide, please. This is how it would actually be plumbed. We'd have water that's coming in from the Delta and being conveyed through the canal system, but it's going to go through a transfer facility. See that little tank down there in the middle of the slide? Well, that's going to pump water over to Los Vaqueros Reservoir where we'll store it. When the customers, our partners need it, they'll be able to draw the water down to the transfer facility, and then they're going to build the new pipeline that's going to be called the Transfer Byron Bethany Pipeline. It'll connect the Los Vaqueros pipeline system to the California Aqueduct. Now, I tell you, aside from the fact that it provides pooled water, here's one thing that I want to really think that's really important to mention as well. Every one of our intakes to the Delta has a fish screen on it. So unlike the California Aqueduct, that water, all the water that goes into CCWD's system will be screened. And that is very positive for the environmental community. Every drop of water that's not having to be pumped to the California Aqueduct now goes through a fish screen facility. It'll be screened water, so it minimizes the impact on fish and fisheries within the Delta. So that's the other way that we're kind of helping the overall cause here. The water then is conveyed using the South Bay Aqueduct to our respective agencies, sister agencies that are part of this partnership. Next slide, please. The other major project we have underway is the Contra Costa Canal. This is the canal system that I mentioned earlier. It's about 50 miles long. The area that is in bold blue, called the main canal, is where the bulk, 100% of the water that provides our area must travel through. We're in that area where the blue line ends near Clyde. There's a shortcut pipeline that goes across that area over to Martinez. That's why the loop canal is redundant. The main area, main water system to provide water for all of our customers in that big blue area. It's 90 years old. Whenever we have major storms, we have anywhere from 25 to as high as 200 landslides that occur along the canal system, because the area, when it was constructed, this area by the Bureau of Reclamation back in the 1930s, this was a large agricultural area. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. We're in a very urbanized setting now. And a lot of the soils around here, and using geotechnical terms, they're young soils, which move quite a bit. So when you have an open channel like this, it's going to have earth that's going to come in during major rainstorms, and we got to take care of that. We also have to deal with earthquakes. And so what we're finding is as soil creep occurs, and every once in a while we'll get a rattler that'll come through, we'll get breaks. We've now been increasing the amount of maintenance we're doing on the canal, and we're getting more breaks than usual. Looking at the overall investment and the overall assessment of the condition of the facility, it's at the end of its economic life. We now need to make it's time to now put the canal in a pipeline. This is a photo of the stretch we've already done in gray. If you look at the photo on the right-hand side where it says the Delta, the area in gray is the part of the canal that's already in the pipeline. This is what we need to continue to do to improve strong reliability, not only for existing generation, but future generations. We're looking to get federal funding, federal loan program under WIFIA, federal program to provide funding for this that will minimize the impact of having this going from a canal to a pipeline system. The other thing that'll help us too, by the way, is one of the other advantages of the Joint Powers Authority and Los Vaqueros expansion is we will be able to generate additional revenue because of the use of the facility. We'll provide additional revenue, which we'll use to defray the cost of these major capital investments we're going to be needing, not only for existing customers, but for the future generations of CCWD. Next slide, Melissa. Well, I hope you found this information helpful. If you need more information about any of the information I provided, any of the slides, you can always go to ccwater.com. Give us a call at 688-8000. You can also connect with us on social media. But I hope you found this information helpful and be happy to answer any questions you have. There we go. You're muted. You're muted.
Tamara, you're muted.
Muted, Tamara.
Am I unmuted now?
There you go.
Yes.
My computer lied. Okay. Yeah, when I use the term rationing, I understand that that's a term from the 70s, but it's sort of stuck, the surcharge, the conservation, the reduction of use. In applying across the board percentage, whether it's 10 or 15 or 20, how is the district addressing the sort of inherent unfairness in that it rewards people who have not been conserving? They reduce 15% from 1,000 gallons a day to people who have been peeing in the bushes, so to speak. Where do we reduce 15%? That is just, the eternal question.
Yeah, actually, yeah. In terms of, I don't know if fairness is the right phrase for it, but I think the one thing is that the beauty of how we're approaching this 50% surcharge is, if you are able to reduce 15%, there is no penalty because the bill will be roughly the same. So the best way to not worry about a 15% impact is to reduce your own consumption. I wish I could say that. I wish there's fairness overall. That's why, from my perspective, I'm trying to push the governor. I've made a point. I'm very active with the Association of California Water Agencies. I'm on the board of directors, and we're pushing hard for the governor to not just make a mandate that just boom, blanket mandate across 20% reduction for everybody, regardless of how well you've done over the years.
Right.
I says, if our agencies and our citizens have done a great job of reducing their consumption, and the trend is towards hitting the 15% goal, don't penalize us. Make your mandate be based on criteria. And so I wish I had a better answer for you. Part of the heartache I have as a board member is there are folks that have come to us and say, I've already been reducing. Exactly, great DMT. I've implemented low flush toilets. I've got this. I no longer have a lawn. I have a carpet now that I bought out for the front lawn. I took advantage of the rebates, and now I need to get another 15% on top of that. And I look at them and I just said, just do the best you can. That's all you can do. I just wish there was better criteria, but that's what's the directives that are coming from the governor now. And I think there's more.
No, and I already knew the answer to that question, but I just thought I would throw it out there anyway. One of the problems, one of the issues that we have out, I live out on Morgan territory. One of the issues that we have out there is that most of us ripped out all of the landscape we possibly can.
Yeah.
But we have to keep, like, our redwood trees away from the house, and anything that's growing around the perimeter of our house, we have to keep that wet and green and lush for fire protection.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how we do that and stay within the 15%, because the hotter and drier it gets, the more we need to soak, you know, the vegetation that still remains that we haven't already ripped out.
Yeah. I wish I had the answer for you. It's a challenge across the board.
I already knew the answer to that.
I
think, Michael, you have your
Ernie, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and your commitment to water conservation. Over the years, I've talked to both John Berg and John Coleman, who independently represent Pleasant Hill. And I'm always asking the same question and never getting the answer that I want to hear. The question is, when are we going to start doing desalination? Initially, there was a lot of cost involved. I heard that 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
The things that I'm reading lately is the costs have been coming down. I've also heard the argument that it's not green, it's not sensitive to climate. I've heard, and I've read recently that there are techniques that are being developed and being used that are green friendly, climate friendly. Obviously, we're missing a terrific resource if we don't look to desalinate the abundance of ocean water that we have around us and have to constantly be at the whim of the snowpack, which we have absolutely no control over, as you well know. Is there any progress being made from either your agency or other agencies in the area in moving forward to trying to determine whether or not desalination is a feasible option for our communities?
So it's a great question. Let me answer it locally, and then I'll step back and look at it more from a state of California side. So from a local level, we're part of a consortium that's working on studying the use of putting a desalination plant near one of our intakes over near the Pittsburgh area. So it has been studied by a consortium of different water agencies. We actually conducted a pilot study regarding the potential for placing desalination there. It's still being reviewed. I will tell you that for a fact that it is, the moment there's a higher level of economic viability for it, it's something that we'll obviously be considering. So we meet on a regular basis to consider whether the factors now dictate whether or not we should consider that. So it has been studied by our respective agency as part of a partnership like we did with the JPA on Los Vaqueros expansion. So that is still being coordinated, and we do that as part of the Bay Area regional planning. That's also one of the elements that's talked about and evaluated. Now, the issue with desalination, you may not know too overall, Michael, but I actually have been working on desalination for about 20 years. Matter of fact, I was general manager for water utility down in Monterey, and I was brought down there specifically to get their desalination plant up and running. And I got their EIR up and running, but it's obviously gone through a variety of different headaches along the way, between environmental review, regulatory review, the Coastal Commission review. I mean, all those different elements play a key role. The environmental aspects and compliance is a major issue. Carlsbad finally came online after almost 20, 22, 25 years of planning, designed to finally get up and running in Southern California. Until there's a greater easing of either the regulations now coming to a head about authorizing desalination, the sooner the better. The dilemma is that even though the technology is getting better with desalination, it still would require a 30% increase in rates alone to pay for the additional electricity costs associated with it and some of the capital investments and the operations and maintenance assessment. But it's becoming more viable. The Alameda County Water District gets 10 MGD in the Bay Area for desalination. They have a groundwater desalination facility. Right now, Santa Clara Valley Water District has a big recycled water facility that they use with desalination to deal with their future water supplies as well. So their cost data, when they talk about the Bay Area planning, we look at their cost data to make sure that the cost numbers still are within the realm of possibility. So it's getting better. It's getting more cost effective. There has to be some fundamental changes done with environmental implementation for more desalination to be more readily put into place throughout California, not just the Bay Area. But those are the constraints that are happening right now. It's still out there.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Ernie. But one of these days, we're going to have to bite the bullet and realize that we just can't continue to base all of our water needs on snowpack. And obviously, costs are important, but I think that people will be willing to pay more money if they have an assurance of having an ongoing and continuing water supply from desalination or other more modern means. Anyway, I appreciate I appreciate your being on top of this, and I look forward
Yeah.
to hearing more from you in the future.
My pleasure. The other thing we're working on too, by the way, is Texas is evaluating different ways. The big issue that's happening with desalination is how to handle the brine, which is what's left over when they filter the water.
Mhm.
So they're actually doing a multi-million-dollar study to see whether or not the elements that are coming out of the brine can be reused in some way in commercial practices. So there's hope out there that's happening at the south in the Southwest region.
Thanks again.
You bet, Michael. Is it Michael? Yeah,
Yeah,
Michael.
all right.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the great presentation. So from a policy perspective, how's the state approaching the restrictions or reductions in the urban environment versus in big ag? I'm not saying we shouldn't reduce in urban areas, but I don't know if anyone's measuring what big ag is doing out in the Central Valley, and shouldn't that all be part of one broader policy?
Mike,
It's probably
Michael,
a third rail for you.
that's not a third rail, that's a landmine. So 80% of the water in the state of California is for ag, 20% is for urbanized setting, for other uses. It's an incredible issue. I will tell you one thing. The one thing that is happening, and it's not shared very readily, is that the ag community is doing quite a bit of effort to try to reduce their water consumption. The dilemma you run into is when you look at municipal districts that are making measures to control, to handle water supply and water conservation, a lot of the ag operators have a lot of sensitive information. In other words, their ability to generate a product in a way that's less costly means that they're trying to be more efficient with their water. Well, they don't necessarily want to share that information with their competition from that perspective, right? So that's part of the issue that happens. There's not a lot of sharing of information with the ag community on what their best plans or practices are within the respective agencies. What will the governor require for the ag community? I don't know. It's one of the issues that I know is out there. Aqua has a very strong agricultural group that's working on it. But again, I would say the ag community has its different influences about what the governor mandates. We have no control over that. So stay tuned. We're watching it too. I wish I had a better answer for you. Wade.
Thank you. Very good presentation. Thank you very much. The question that I have is, I guess, a little bit more general, but kind of started by Michael Harris, is what other alternative sources other than snowpack have been considered, and what are considered, more viable, and to what percent of water would they be able to provide, other than desalinations? Or are there other sources of water that we can use? Yeah,
so there is one of the areas that is out there, groundwater, right? Groundwater represents, I think, a third or 1/4 of 1% for our consumption. But the issue is that now with the new rules and regulations, is aquifer has to be adjudicated. You can't use the water in a way that's going to reduce its capacity or its ability to be sustainable. So groundwater management is always a source that you can look at. Our area is so urbanized, unfortunately, that there may have been depleted water sources, or not necessarily the best water for treatment. It would be very, very expensive, more expensive than surface water. But if you look at, I think Monterey is a great example of what you're asking, Wade. So in Monterey, one of the things that they did, besides desalination, they've been trying to adopted the model that Orange County has, and that is they're treating their wastewater and putting it in aquifers, letting the nature do additional cleansing of the water, and then they're tapping the water back out and using that for potable water within their system. Orange County has been operating this way now for about, I think, 15 years. Very successfully, one of the most successful programs we've seen about potable reuse overall that is now being used for drinking water. Monterey was looking at desalination because they have the same issue. All their water comes through the Carmel River for the most part. And so that is what provides water in their aquifers. They draw the water out and they try to use it overall. But I think what they're doing now is they're going to reuse their recycled water to put it back into their aquifers to charge it up and replenish their entire consumption and demand from the aquifer system. So they'll get water from Carmel River. They'll put the recycled water into the aquifer as well, let it get cleaned up even more and more polished, and then draw the water out. It's called the One Water program down in Monterey. So that's another option that's being touted as possibility. So stay tuned. Orange County's been very effective with it. The dilemma we run into with the drought is that, recall that water recycling means that it's taking water that's flowing from the community, being treated and then reused, right? When you conserve water 15%, what's happening to the supply of recycled water? You don't have that much water going to the wastewater treatment plant for treating. That means that the supply of recycled water also gets depleted. So it's a very, very integrated process of how water works. Remember that water journey that I did at the very beginning? We could add another one for recycled water that says the amount of water that's available for recycled water depends on how much water the community uses. And during droughts, reduced water means reduced water supply for recycled water. So we have to think about what is the percentage and how this all works together to try to come up with a comprehensive plan that takes that all into account. But that's the best I would suggest, is the one water concept of reuse potable water.
Thanks.
Mhm.